To impersonate the ZX Spectrum, you must first learn its graphical limitations. Its screen was 256 by 192 pixels. Its palette were these 15 colours. And every 8x8 pixel block, which from now on I'm going to call characters because that's what we called them, could only have 2 of these colours. And if we're being truly pedantic, these are the bright colours, these are the dull colours. A character can only have bright or dull colours in it, but not both. Note that black is included both in dull and bright. A brightened version of black is still black. So why was that then? Well, when Sir Clive Sinclair invented the Specky, he imagined it being used for something like this. Note that how every character contains one letter or number, or character. And so, by setting the colour of the ink or the paper, again, that's what we called it, you essentially create a page of text written with a load of coloured pens that someone's been at with a load of highlighters. I mean, it wasn't entirely alone. The C64 and the NES had similar limitations, with the NES allowing 4 colours for character, and the C64 could be... A character could either be 8x8 pixels with 2 colours, or 4x8 pixels with 4 colours. Those were wide pixels, double width. And then they had sprites that floated over the top, which the Specky never had. And they also had more limitations about which colours could appear at once and which colours couldn't, and what video modes, and it all gets incredibly complicated and deserves its own video. And hold on, wasn't this meant to be a tutorial on creating Spectrum-style loading screens using the Gimp, rather than like a history lesson on the graphical limitations of the most popular machines of the 80s? This tutorial contains loading screens of 10 YouTubers that do Spectrum-related content, amongst other things. Can you identify all of them? Tell us in the comments. So, this is the Gimp, and this is the image we're going to specify? I don't know. I'm not sure what the verb of turn into a Spectrum loading screen should be.
The Gimp is like Photoshop except free, and you should have it installed already.
If your version of the Gimp doesn't look like this, I wouldn't worry, but we are going to need this, the Tool Options tab and the Layers tab. If you've not got those, go to Windows and Dockable Dialogues. We've got Layers and Toolbox, which is that one, and Tool Options. So the first thing we need to do is to scale it to the right size. So Image, Scale Image, and it's 256 pixels wide. If this is linked, then it will scale it in proportion. So I can type 1 in, press Tab, and it will find the next one for me. And I can press Scale. It's now currently rather higher than the Spectrum loading screen. Oh, if you hold down Shift and press the middle mouse button, which is a key press I've become used to by Blender, this happens. I'm not actually altering anything, I'm just rotating the image. Nice. Really useful option, that. If you've broken it like that, you can click here and type 0. So you can hold down the middle mouse button to move the image around, and you can use Control and roll the middle mouse button to zoom in and out. And then if I go to Image, Canvas Size, with these unlinked, I can type 192 and press Tab, and this little box here just shows me how I'm going to crop it. So I can go resize there. I'm now going to go Layers, and I'm just going to create a load of clones here because I'm not sure. The first thing to do is we're going to create the ink layer. So we're going to create an image that's entirely black and white, and we're then going to colorize it, which we're basically going to do by hand. So we can go to Colors Threshold, and we can adjust this bit, and we can decide where it cuts off. As we do that, we can do that as well. That's useful. That actually might be useful. So there's that option, but it's a bit sort of cloudy. So I'm going to turn this layer off with that. We're on Layers here. And this one, we're going to do something a little more complicated. We're going to go to Enhance Sharpen brackets Unsharp Mask, and radius of 3 pixels, that's acceptable. Can wrap that up, and though I seems to be aging me, is going to be quite useful if we then go to colours threshold here. We can then find a nice cutter off point. So that's that option. We've got that one option there, that option, or that option. Well, this one, however, let's go to enhance unsharp mask. We're going to and to there, but this time we're going to go to colours dither. And this may not be super noticeable at the moment. We've got 6 red levels, 7 green levels and 6 blue levels. So the red, green, blue channels are split up into those different amounts. If I bring these down to 2 each, it's looking quite pleasantly pixelated. But actually the thing is 2 levels, it's counting 0 in that. So red can be 0, halfway, or max. We haven't got an option to bring it any lower. So instead I'm going to bring it up a level. And the dithering method, I prefer Bayer. It seems appropriately retro. They tend to go with that checkerboard dithering. So I go there, and then I go to threshold. And yeah, that's the one I'm going to use, except that it would be nice to get some of that detail in the hair. What you can do, as we've got these layers, is we could use a rubber to rub some sections of one of them out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that one above that one, turn that one back on, and if I go to a rubber, go to tool options, set to 1 pixel at the moment. If we set it to maybe 20 pixels, and they're now able to rub out and get some hair detailing. And now I'm happy with that being the ink layer. Now I'm now going to go on the layers tab, going to right click and flatten image. So now I've only got one layer, which is this. Brilliant. So I'm now going to create another layer with this button, and I want it to be, the foreground color is currently set to black, which is good. And then I'm going to create another layer, which this time I actually want to set it to the background color. Actually, I haven't set the background color yet, so I better show you how to set these. So the background color is currently, we want to set it to C0, C0, C0. So what does that mean? So Impromptu, it gets animated titles, eh? Roll numbers. Right. So the first column is tens or decimal. Somebody get me a pointer. Yeah, the first column is tens or decimal. As you can see, we're using the numbers from 0 to 9, and when we get to 9, it goes back to 0, and the next digit along goes up by 1. The next one is binary, which is what computers use internally. It only has the number 0 and 1, and when it gets to 2, it goes back to 0, and the next digit along goes up by 1. And next we have hexadecimal, or base 16. Here it has to borrow the numbers A to F because it's got digits from 0 to 15. And then when it reaches 16, it goes to 0 and the next digit goes up by 1. Now you may note that binary and hexadecimal are kind of in time with each other, with 4 binary digits being 1 hexadecimal digit. Can you see that? Good. So that number, is that a hexadecimal number? Well, actually, it's 3 hexadecimal numbers. 1 for red, 1 for green, and 1 for blue. So if we're limiting ourselves to the spectrum palette, all the bright colours, each of these 3 numbers that makes it up will either be 00 or FF, so that's 00 or 255 in decimal. And if we're doing the dull colours, they'll either be 00 or C0. Those 2 are the red channel. Those middle 2, which I'm having difficulty selecting, are the green channel. Those 2 are the green channel, and those 2 are the blue channel. And they're in hexadecimal. So let's set that to C0, C0, C0. If you type O's instead of zeros, it's not going to work. And now we can create a new layer, which that's still the background layer, the one underneath it's that shade of grey, the shade of grey the spectrum uses. So we'll fill it with the background colour and press OK. So I'm now just going to turn those off momentarily using the eyes and select this and select Control A all and Control C copy. And then this one, I'm going to right click the top layer. Actually, let's turn these layers back on and right click the top layer and go add layer mask. And it doesn't really, I was thinking like I could go selection and go add, but it's not really working. We're now going to, with this, so that now we've got this black layer, this front layer, which is going to be this black layer, which is the color of the ink, this front layer, which is going to be the color of the screen, the paper, and this layer is the mask. So this layer selects which of them it is. It's going to make sense later on, okay? So now I can press V, and this goes to a floating selection up here. So I can right click that and go anchor layer. And I see what's gone wrong is for some reason the mode on this layer is set to darken only. So if we set it to normal, yes, I now have myself peeping out in spectrum colors, and I'm going to set that to normal as well, that layer. So the next thing we want to do is if we go to image, we're going to configure a grid with a foreground color of a darker grey, noticeably darker than this grey, but also not black, so we can see it against the black as well. Okay, and we want it to have a horizontal and vertical spacing of 8 pixels. We can't see anything. We now have to go to view, show grid, and let's go to view, did I click that? Oh, I did actually, snap to grid as well. So now we can see where each of I'm still on rubber. We can now see each of these squares here is going to be one of the characters. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use that one there, and I'm going to select a box here. So each of these characters can have only 2 colours in. We're using this, we're using the layer mask to select whether it's the front colour or the back colour. So now if I've selected that box, and I can select the black back colour, and I can go for a red, green, blue, C0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay. And I can fill that with red. Again, I can select another box, as we've got snap to grid on. But sometimes the snap to grid isn't 100%, so we can select a box there and fill that in. I've found that the best way of shading human skin, or at least white human skin, I've basically done a load of YouTubers that use the ZX Spectrum, and I've not found any that are black. Another thing we can do with this is we can, with this select tool here, is what I'm using to select these things, we can hold down shift and it will add it to the selection. Also going to add some highlighting, so that area and that area on this one is going to be set to white. So we've got a bit of white there. Whoops, I wanted to colorize that one. And the thing is, this is a fill tool. So it'll make sense, like if I filled that area there, that's why you notice how it only filled that area there. It's basically a traditional fill tool like you've had on Paint or virtually any other software ever. If I turn off this layer, so you can see what's happening, I can now fill that area and fill that area separately. Once you figure out that that's what it's doing, it makes it work a lot better. Also, I've realised now, I'll just finish that bit off first, that I'm breaking one of the rules that I set up. Now, remember I said that these are the bright colours, these are the dull colours. A character can only have bright or dull colours in it, but not both. That means that this cross shape of white that we have here, we need to have a bright red. We need to have a red of FF0000 as this colour on them. Okay, there's a few tiles around here. I think it would look better rather than this one, for example. It's basically all grey with a black line down the middle. I think it would look better if it was basically green and grey, but not with a black line. So to do this, first of all, I select the mask layer, and I'm just going to select the area I'm working on, and I'm going to go to the pencil tool. And in tool options, I'm going to make sure that there's a load of things like smooth stroke, which would be anti-aliasing, which we don't want. And I don't want applied. I basically don't want any of these things ticked. And I want to have a size of 1 pixel, so 1 there. And I can just fill in this area here. And then if I go back to layers, I'm going to select the bit that's currently black, so this layer. I'm going to select dull green or OOC000 and fill. Okay, I'm going to do the same for this one. Select that one, and I'm still on this layer, and I'm still on the green, so there we go. And this one here, right, let's go back to the mask layer, and I'm actually just going to start off by pressing delete. Whoops, let's have black to start with. Delete, and now I'm going to select white, and I'm going to zoom in a bit more actually, using control and rolling the middle mouse button, and go to pen, and it's painting it in green at the moment, which is not actually what I want, but that's fine. That one we now want to set to a light grey, C0, C0, C0. And fill, and this one we want that green, so it's actually still there, and fill. Okay, that's great, but there does seem to be a weird kind of anti-aliasing problem here, which I'm going to assume is on the mask layer, and that is easily solved. I can just go, well actually I may as well just select the whole thing, so Control A, and if I go colours threshold, well, I can set the point here, but that's got rid of it. That's fine. Sorted. Okay, so I think we're ready to save this. I'm going to save 2 versions. I'm going to save a full colour version, which is this, but I'm also going to save a black and grey version. As the Spectrum loads a loading screen, it will first of all load this black and grey version, and then it will colour it afterwards. So first of all, we'll save the colour version. So I'm going to export as me ZX col, and yeah, this is the second time I'm doing this, so I am going to be replacing the file. And now we need to make the black and white version. So what I want to do is I want to make this layer entirely black and this layer entirely that classic light grey colour. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to right click on that layer and go remove alpha channel, and then I'm going to make the background colour black, and then I'm Control A to select all if I haven't done already, and press delete. And then I'm going to do the same for this one, except that once I've removed the alpha channel, I'm going to set this to light grey or C0, C0, C0. OK, and press delete. So yeah, this is what it will look like before it colours it in, and I'm going to export this as me ZX BW for black and white. And now, before I go any further, I'm just going to Control Z, undo, 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 till I get back to the full colour version, because otherwise I might actually lose this colour data that I've spent so long setting up. And I'm actually going to save, yeah, if I drag this around, that pops up there, me ZX, a GIMP file version in case I want to edit this later on. I need to drag the corner so I can actually get at the save button there. Brilliant! See you soon. Bye.